Then the winery is situated in Paarl and has been around since 1791. I think the most famous of the wines for Nederburg most probably would be Cabernet, and then also something that's very familiar, the Baron, which is, I think, a household blend at this stage, but there's so much more to Nederburg than just those wines. So the wines that you're going to be using is, for instance, South African favorite Pinot Noir, so a locally grown variety crossed specifically for South African conditions. It's going to be a Sauvignon Blanc, and then something a bit more complex, which we call the Motorcycle Marble, which is a Rhone style blend and something that really works well in our growing conditions. So you'll also see within the blend, there's some varieties that's not that well known. And what we do at Nederburg is we experiment with about 30 varieties each year. That's not your normal Sauvignon, Shiraz, Cabernet, Merlot, and that's purely to look at what climate change can do to our environment, which grapes are maybe better suited for our growing conditions. And that's why you would find varieties like Carignan and Grenache, and Cinsault, and Mourvedre, all those type of varieties on top of your normal Shiraz, Cab, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Sauvignon, and Chardonnay. So the team of winemakers that I've got, a very well-known lady, which is the cellar master, Lizelle Gaber, so that heads up the winemaking. The first question is, how did I get to start in the wine business? Now, I've had a very good agricultural teacher at school. I wasn't in an agricultural school, but we had the subject. So he made me fall in love with agriculture, and then I got a wine bursary from, in those days, KWV, to go and study wine. And that's how I got into the business. So for me, and the question posed is, what is a good wine? That's believe the best wine that you've got is the one that you've got in your glass, because wine is not just the liquid that you drink, it's also the environment that you're in, the friends that you're with, the food that you have it with. So all of those factors actually play into when a wine is good. I've on many occasions tasted a wine abroad, say in Italy or in France, and then the setting is just so beautiful, and you taste it and you think it's magnificent, and then you buy an extra bottle, bring it back home, but it just doesn't taste the same. And I think it's all those softer elements that actually makes a really good wine. If you were to look at technically what is a good wine, then I would say that it's something that's true to the variety. So if you've got a Sauvignon Blanc, then you would want to have Sauvignon Blanc flavors. Elegance is quite important. Freshness is important. You don't want a big, cloy Chardonnay, for instance, that battery-style Chardonnays are not that fashionable anymore. You want vibrancy. You want the wine to be alive in the glass. When you move to reds, concentration, and you can have an elegant wine which is not necessarily concentrated, but there's still multiple layers of flavor, and that then also brings an element of quality to the product. So yes, there's many different ways of looking at it, but at the end of the day, I think wine needs to be served in a way that it's an enjoyable drink. I don't believe in the room temperature of serving wine. So, in South Africa, room temperature can be 22, 23, 25 degrees Celsius, and no wine, and specifically red wine, tastes good at that type of temperatures. So wines need to be chilled down. And when they talk about room temperature, they actually talk about room temperature in Europe in the 1950s, before there was central heating and all of those. So you're looking at 16, 17 degrees Celsius where red wine needs to be served. And you can do the experiment yourself, serving a wine at 24 or 22 degrees Celsius versus 17. There's just much more vibrancy on serving specifically the reds than at lower temperatures. It can rather heat up in the glass, and you experience more flavors than just going with a bottle off the shelf and it being too warm, the alcohol burning, which is really not pleasant. So I think it's all about tasting and being in a tasting group or surrounding yourself with people that are also passionate. You can only be a very good winemaker if you taste a lot and can compare what you've got to what other people do. If you just want to study wine, I think you'll never be able to stop studying once you've started. There's just so many things about wine that I don't know, and I've been in the industry for 22, 23 years, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like opening a book, but there's no ending to the book. You can just keep on learning. What particularly the things that I'm interested in at this stage is how we're actually moving back to practices of, say, 100 or 200 years ago. So where you would use amphora, so big clay pots to ferment in instead of a lot of oak. It's just amazing how that technology has now come back again, even though it's been around for many hundreds of years. I don't think you can ever achieve all your winemaking goals. I mean, I've been very privileged to be surrounded by great people who helped me in the vineyard, helped me in the winery. We've had great achievements in making the best white wine in the world, the best red wine in the world, but that's never enough. So you need to keep on extending your goals to really stay relevant. I think what South Africa needs currently is a wine that of larger magnitude. There's great small boutique wineries, but none of them can deliver to the value where you can really show what South Africa can do to the rest of the world. So, and to do that, you need a bigger winery to be able to supply larger volumes to really show. And I think that gap hasn't been filled yet. If you look at Australia, they, for instance, got Penfolds, and Penfolds is a great brand, which is all over the world, and everybody knows what Australia can stand for. And that's what I'm trying to achieve with Nederburg, and specifically all the new things that we're working on at Nederburg. I mean, besides packaging changes, we're looking at a new style of wine that we'll be introducing, like I said, in October this year. We've upgraded the facility at Nederburg so to be a lot more tourist friendly. We've just appointed a chef, so that will also start. It's quite interesting. I mean, you guys know, being in the industry, that we've appointed the chef the 1st of May. He started looking at what his kitchen should be like, but at this stage we don't know when we'll open. But yeah, he's excited, and it's keeping that excitement. So better things to come, definitely. My all-time favorite wine, I think, that I've drunk would have been a wine from Nederburg. So I'm a big fan of Shiraz, and specifically Rhone-style Shirazes. So the Northern Rhone. If you look at Rhone being a part of France, you've got the Northern Rhone and the Southern Rhone. So the Rhone River then running through that valley. In the Northern Rhone, you've got higher altitudes, and you've got more concentration. It's basically Shiraz-based with a little bit of Viognier. That style of wine is called Côte Rôtie, which is also the small town there. And Nederburg is one of the wineries that has been around there and has really put Rhone-style blends on the map. So having the wine in the Rhone Valley with Mr. Nederburg is, I think, one of the most special occasions that I've ever had. I've mentioned the tasting, but there's also, you need to have you need to understand the commercials. I've studied wine for a very long time, but then later on in life started studying business as well. So to just round off the wine knowledge, I mean, if you've got a lot of technical knowledge or a lot of know-how, you still need to understand the bigger supply chain to really be successful. You can make 1 or 2 bottles of wine that only you like, but if you need to start making wine that 2 million people like, then you need to understand the commercials. You need to understand going out into the field, tasting with people, understanding what their preferences are like. For instance, an American palate is a lot different to a South African palate, is different to a French palate. And it's purely because of the food. I mean, if you think of America, you might have for breakfast, if you stay in a hotel there, you might have pancakes and syrup, whereas in Sweden, you might only have like meat and fish and eggs. So there's different palates that you need to try and complement and make wines for those. And then, it's all about the finances. I mean, you also know that, if cash flow is king, so you need to understand that when you've got cash and how to use it. And I think once you understand the bigger side of business, then you just become such a better winemaker, because you're really understanding the intricate balances between all those. different elements. So interesting question. If I take Nederburg, and I think Nederburg is a very good example, that you need to be able to have what I call brand love. So and you need to create fans. So people need to be able to go into a shop and pick your brand above any other brand. And how you do that is by engaging firstly with people. So either above the line, below the line, with advertising, with PR. Nowadays, obviously, much more important would be social media. But you need to give people a purpose, why to like yours compared to somebody else. What makes Nederburg relevant to you? So we've got some beautiful projects besides it being a beautiful old estate, having beautiful wines. You've got a lot of wineries that do that. So what we do is we've got this mantra of taste, learn, and discover, where you can always learn something new from Nederburg. So and it's not just technical knowledge, but it would be life skills. We've got a CSR project with Quebeca. Quebeca being moving forward, where we build bicycles, and that's really quite rewarding to be able to give back to communities, and people also buy into that feeling good by helping others. We've, for instance, rolled out this Quebeca initiative to our international markets, where certain funds then go back to building bicycles in South Africa. You actually working with and that you're showing integrity in your brand, that you're doing the right thing when nobody else is looking. So that's all the type of things I think that makes a good brand and a brand that stands out on shelf.
So what do you find the hardest part of harvest?
The hardest part of harvest, I think, is keeping everybody motivated, because harvest, each harvest is different. So once you start harvesting and you in the second or third week where the grapes are coming and everything is working in the cellar, people are working nicely together, then it's quite easy to go into that harvest mode. But it's like a vintage that we've had now, where one day you'll bring in, say, 50 tons, and then for 3-4 days you don't do anything, and then again a little bit. It's keeping people motivated in that period, because the rest of the time adrenaline kicks in, and then it's easy. So it's about having that mutual goal, and it's hard. It's long hours. People work shifts, so irritation sometimes run high. I always joke and say, as you get a fence at home that says "Beware of the dog," I want to put up a signboard at our winery saying "Beware of the winemakers," because they will start biting at some point. Normally not in the first 2 weeks, but yeah, everybody's nerves get, so it's about calming everybody down, making sure we're doing the right thing, we're going in the right direction. Motivating people becomes quite important and can sometimes be hard.
Justice is from Southern Allegheny Maharani in Durban.
What grape do you find basically hard to work with?
I think the grape that's most difficult to work with is Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir being a grape that's got quite a thin skin, not a lot of color, but more important, it's a grape that don't really grow in a lot of areas. You've got astounding Pinot Noirs in Burgundy, for instance, in France, in the Niël and Arde Valley, close to Hermanus here in South Africa. They make some good Pinot Noir. I planted a vineyard a couple of years ago when I was still with a previous winery, and then moved the vineyard over to where I'm now with Nederburg. And it's the highest Pinot Noir vineyard in the country. It's in the series Karoo, so you're looking at about 1,080 meters above sea level. And why that's important is you want a big difference between day and nighttime temperature. So being part of the Karoo already, you've got that, and it's good apple growing conditions. So we've planted a vineyard there, and it's absolutely amazing the fruit that you get from there. But it's all about having the right vineyard. So it would be the hardest one to work with if you don't have the right grapes. I think it's pretty easy once you've actually found the right spot to work with it. The rest of the grapes, it's not really the grape as such that is difficult to work with. It's more maybe the growing conditions, making sure that the vine is in balance and that you're actually making a wine for the right purpose. So before harvest and this time of the year already, we start talking to our growers and say, okay, next year I want you to deliver 30 tons of grapes from this block, but this block actually needs to be farmed more open, because this year we found that the Sauvignon Blanc flavors were too green. We want to have more file flavors, for instance. So it's that constant engagement that you've got with the grower to make sure that the end goal, he knows what the end goal is, and that you're completing the circle the whole time. Giving feedback to the grower, how the grapes was, tasting it with him is quite important. And we get, because of the size of our winery, we get from our own farms, but our own farms only deliver about 20%. The other 80% is bought in grapes that we've got 10-year rolling contracts with growers placed all over the Western Cape.
My question was just, between all the seasons, what's the most difficult part about maintaining the soil and the vineyards between harvests?
So it's not necessarily difficult. I think you need to be more diligent about it, to make sure that you've now taken the harvest off the vine. So you need to be able to give water to the vine again to make sure that it builds reserves so that it can flower again. And and sometimes when you've got dryland vineyards, like most of the coastal region here in South Africa has, then you're dependent on rain. And you would know, a couple of years back when we were in that serious drought, so you didn't have that water post-harvest. So, and that already is quite difficult, because you haven't got control over it. You haven't got water to give, but you know that you actually need to be giving water, or you're relying on rain. So that's quite difficult, because then you already know that it's going to affect the harvest coming. Pruning is not that difficult. Sowing cover crop is quite important, because you've now taken from the plant, you've taken its fruit, so you need to give energy back to the soil. So you plant cover crop, for instance, that's like lupin or lucerne, where there's high nitrogen, where you can start feeding the soil again. We need to leave our soils in a better state than what we found them for generations to come. So it's not just about extracting, you need to actually put back as well. And you put back not with fertilizer, because that can ruin the vineyard in the long run. You'll rather put back with organic material.
Hi there. I do have a question though. Based on a winemaker's perspective, what would you say that you do different to other winemakers?
I think Nederburg, we're quite fortunate that we can choose from a lot of areas. We've got a very big pool of grapes that we can choose from. So you would have less vintage variation. If you're a smaller winery, then you're reliant maybe on one or two blocks, and you'll have ups and downs. Some weather conditions will affect the vineyard. You might have hail or frost, and then you have a small crop or a big crop. Where with a larger winery like Nederburg, we can choose from different areas to make sure we've got that consistency. And then also, because we've been around for so long, we've got a very we've got a specific way of having our oak treatment. If you've ever been to Nederburg, you'll see very big oak vats. So, where a barrel is normally 225 liters or 300 liters, ours would be, we've got those as well, but and that's the same as other wineries. What we have in addition is we've got these 25,000 liter oak casks. So once you've blended, then you actually put the wine back into that oak cask. It nourishes the wine and gives it another period of maturation, which smaller wineries can't do. The maturation that they will do after oak maturation is in stainless steel. And that's quite a reductive way of doing it. So that's quite a big advantage for us. What we also do different, and there's one or two wineries that do it, we've got a great library of matured wines, so that we release again at a later stage. So you would be able to buy a wine, for instance, that's 10 years old or 15 years old, where we mature the wine, store the wine for the customer. So which I think is also quite unique. A lot of other wineries might not have the cash flow, but we've been doing it for so long that we're in the right cycle now to be able to do it, that it doesn't really affect your cash flow that much. But to start from scratch, it would be like producing something but not releasing anything for 15 years. So you need the cash to carry you for 15 years, which I think very few people, maybe except Bill Gates, can do.
That capacity is important. Thank you, Grant. That was an excellent question. I've got Angel from the Durban ICC. Just a quick one. We've got literally 4 minutes, 5 minutes left.
Morning. What is the most rewarding thing about your job?
Oh, my job. Oh, okay. The most rewarding thing for me is to see how people enjoy wine. So when I open a bottle for them and I start engaging with people and I pour it, you can see immediately if this person is going to be hooked for life or if they'll never taste it again. It's just the facial expression. It's amazing when you tell them, listen, this wine needs to, it's going to fill your mouth or it's going to have a sweet finish, and they actually get it. I mean, it's, and it's quite rewarding to be able to train and teach and to try and keep it as simple as possible, because I think most winemakers, and it's not per se the winemaker's fault, it's going to be marketing or anybody's fault, we try and make things way too complex. So, it's different varieties, different vintages, all that, and it doesn't have to be that complex. So there's a few basic things that you need to think of, and then besides that, it's about enjoying it, and just, like I said in the beginning, the environment. But engaging with people, to answer your question, and to see that they really enjoy the product is definitely the most rewarding.
Yeah. What has surprised you about being a winemaker?
You should actually ask my wife that question. What surprises me is that very few people actually, if you're not in the hospitality industry or in the wine industry, knows that you can actually study it at the University of Stellenbosch for 4 years. It's a 4-year degree. And then after that, did honors and an MBA and all those type of things. But if me and my wife walks into a conversation, she's in tax and works in tax to work for big corporates like PwC and Ernst & Young. And we walk to a party and they ask, okay, typical question, what do you do? And then all their attention goes, oh, in fact, you're a winemaker. So it's like it's just a normal job, it's not that. So that's maybe what surprised me the most. It's like, I should actually be saying, I'm selling narcotics or something like that. Maybe they'll not talk to me, I don't know. But no, then everybody wants to talk to the winemaker. My favorite grape, I think if I had to choose, if you force me to choose one, it's like forcing me to choose one of my children. So that's why I've only got one child, so it's maybe easier for me to answer. My favorite grape would be Chenin Blanc. I think Chenin, and the reason is that Chenin Blanc is an amazing, honest variety. It shows you need to treat it very delicately, otherwise it will bite you. But it's also looking at a Chenin Blanc from a specific vintage is like taking a photo of the vintage. It's very susceptible to weather conditions. So to give you an example, if the conditions are quite rainy or you've got more rain than usual, then you might have more rot or you would have higher acidities. Your wine would be more linear. Whereas if it's a sunnier vintage, then you might have more riper fruit. You can even go to a stage where there's raisiny fruit, so different profile of Chenin altogether. It's just so versatile, and like I said, it's a very honest grape. It shows you exactly what the vintage was like.
We're going to run off now because the time's up. But listen, Niël, thank you so much for your time. Terrific. And on behalf of everybody here this morning, such a pleasure to have this opportunity with you.